I'm going to introduce today someone that's very familiar to a lot of your juniors and seniors, but maybe not so much for the freshmen, except maybe the brick freshmen that had a chance to go swing from ropes and do things like that this year with Mr. Bonenberger. Mr. Bonenberger is here to talk as a Williamson graduate and a chairman of our Board of Trustees to you guys today about philanthropy. So a little background on Bill. Bill is a graduate with the class of 7W9. He is originally from Tamaqua, Pennsylvania. You got any Tamaqua people here? No? All right. And a graduate of the brick shop. He was Dean's List all 3 years in the top 10% of his class when he graduated. When he left Williamson, he started with Pennsylvania Power and Light in the construction department, but within a year left there to go to Toll Brothers Builders. And he spent 6 years there in positions as an estimator and in a field role as well. And project manager. So in 1986, he resigned from Toll Brothers and formed WB Homes with his fiancee, now wife Janet. Janet's here too, right? Hi, Janet. So they started their own business. Bill was full-time, Janet was part-time. But I bet you were full-time more, well, we got paid part-time, I'm sure. The first 3 years, they basically built three homes. The first year they built 3 homes. The second year they built 10. And over 30 years they built 2,500 homes. And they average over around 150 every year now, okay? He has 48 full-timers and 100 to 150 contractors that work for him on any given day. And at his company, the average tenure for an employer is about 20 years. So obviously a great company by all measures. Bill has made service a priority in his life, especially his service to Williamson. For many years, Bill traveled to the Dominican Republic and then El Salvador with Reverend Specht and a group of Williamson students, including this past year at Service Week when they went down to Houston. How many of you guys went down to Houston? You guys, right? So you remember Mr. Bonenberger from down there. He has served as a member of the Brick Shop Advisory Council, the PAC, and has been the class fund chair for his class for 12 years. He joined the Board of Trustees in 2003 and became the vice chair of the board in 2005, and then was unanimously elected chair of the board 2 years ago. He's a member of the Wanamaker Society. The Wanamaker Society, I don't know, are you going to talk about that at all or not?
Probably not, maybe.
No. Wanamaker Society is simply an organization where you agree to leave something in your will for Williamson. And most recently, he and his wife, Janet, made a $1 million pledge to the school as part of our capital campaign. In addition, WB Homes managed the construction of the Watson dorm. How many guys live in Watson? You guys, right? All the seniors get to live in the Watson dorm. Nice dorm. Named after our former chair of the board, Wayne Watson. In doing that, he donated many of his own hours, many of his company's hours, and also contractors, folks that work for him in the business building homes. One of the guys that did the concrete, when Bill told him the story of what they were trying to do for Williamson, donated the material and the labor to put all the concrete in. So it was a great Williamson project. Again, the architect was also a Williamson graduate. Bill overall is an outstanding role model for all of us. He's a great family man. He and his wife Janet are the proud parents of 3 adult children, 2 of which work for the company now. Mm-hmm. And his list of personal and professional awards is long and distinguished, and I'll just give a few of them. The Williamson Distinguished Alumnus Award from the Alumni Association, the I.V. Williamson Award from the Board of Trustees, the Alumnus of the Year Award, and I think that's the trifecta for all the Williamson awards, so nowhere to go from there. Also honored as Distinguished Alumni of Marian Catholic High School in his hometown of Tamaqua. He exemplifies the core values of faith, integrity, diligence, excellence, and service in everything he does. For our students, you could not find a better role model than Bill Bonenberger. So I want to introduce to you our chairman of the board, Williamson graduate, Mr. Bill Bonenberger.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. All right, can you all hear me back there? All right, I'm going to walk around a little bit, and I don't want this to be stuffy. So it's great to be here. It's great to see everybody. My goal here is really, I want to learn something from you guys. I'd like this to be interactive, so I really like to see as many hands up. There's no silly questions here, and hopefully you'll learn a little something from me about how Williamson has maintained its independence for 130 years. hopefully dispel some myths about Williamson's funding, and hopefully we learn something from each other. So let's just start with what is philanthropy, right? Does anybody have a guess as to what the definition of, what does it mean? Anybody? Charitable. Go ahead. Wealthiness. Wealthiness? What else? Anybody else? Giving money to an institution? Anybody over here? Seniors? Right, all of the above are partially true. Let's look and see where do I point this at? Over here? Okay, there we go. So, Webster Dictionary defines philanthropy as the practice of giving money and or time to help make life better for other people, right? So you were all partially right. It comes from a Greek term which, when translated, means love of mankind or love of humanity. Philanthropy is an idea, event, or action that is done to better humanity and usually involves some sacrifice as opposed to being done for a profit motive. So, my company building homes is not philanthropy. We do that for profit. The profit that we then make, that my wife and I make off of that operation, we can use for philanthropy, for charity, or for any other purpose we want. What is the purpose of philanthropy? To improve the well-being of humankind by preventing and solving social problems. So we're going to talk about what is the difference between charity and philanthropy in just a second. But think of philanthropy as a way of looking at some of the real serious social problems in society and finding a way to solve them permanently. Get to the root core of the problem, as opposed to just throwing money at a problem to temporarily feed a hungry person or something like that. Today, philanthropy is often defined as giving gifts of time, talent, and treasure to help make life better for other people. And the real key to this, hold on here. The real key to this, in my mind, is it's time, talent, and treasure. Treasure, obviously, is financial, right? Giving money. Time and talent is equally important to philanthropy. And a good example of that at Williamson is the trustees. Although we all give financially, our real benefit to Williamson is our time and our individual talents. We have guys that are specialists in human resources. We have guys that are specialists in business. We have guys that are legal professionals, and they all bring a specific talent. So there is more than one way to be a philanthropist. It does not just involve giving money. Okay. Let's talk about the difference between philanthropy and charity, because I think it's important to understand that difference. Charity is defined as the voluntary giving of help, usually in the way of money, food, or clothing to those in need. So, you think of a homeless shelter. You think of, people in financial need you give clothing to, right? We have a lot of churches have clothes closets. They've got food pantries. That's charity. It doesn't aim to get at the root cause of the problem, okay? It doesn't aim to help people figure out a way to not need the food pantry. It just simply solves a short-term problem. Philanthropy is not the same as charity. As I said, charity aims to relieve the pain of a particular social problem, whereas philanthropy attempts to address the root cause of the problem. So you've all heard of the proverbial hungry man and the fish, right? If you're a hungry man, is it better to give a hungry man a fish so he can eat, or is it better to teach him how to fish so that he can feed himself for the rest of his life? Anybody have any thoughts on that? What would you rather, if you were hungry, what would you rather get? You'd rather learn how to fish. Yeah, but in the meantime, while you were hungry, it won't be so bad if someone gave you a fish and simultaneously taught you how to fish, right? Then you'd have both problems. And that's where charity and philanthropy sometimes overlap. In fact, they often overlap. where you solve a short-term problem with charity, and then you get to the root of the problem through philanthropy. And it's a pretty big difference, but just do a little exercise here. Buying lunch for a homeless person, philanthropy or charity? Charity. Okay. Volunteering at a soup kitchen? Charity. Guys are getting it. A homeless shelter that requires its residents participate in skills training to re-enter the workforce? And charity. The charity being the part that it's a homeless shelter. They're giving them that for free, but they're also teaching them to solve the root problem of their homelessness, which is, you know, learning some trade skills or technical skills to get a job. How about Mr. Williamson setting aside a good portion of his net worth to start and endow the Williamson Free School of Mechanical Trades? Okay, so what do you think the social problem was that he was trying to solve? Exactly. Young men in the city of Philadelphia that he would see on an everyday basis that had no future. They were congregating on corners. He knew that they had potential, but they had no way of learning a skill that would make them marketable in society. And he wanted to solve that. And he thought about that problem for over 30 years before he finally started Williamson School. All right, how about one more? How about a Williamson alumni donating $200 a year to the Williamson Fund? What would that be? Nope. Philanthropy, because you're donating to Williamson, and Williamson's core mission is exactly as Mr. Williamson laid it out 130 years ago. It's getting at that root problem. So by giving $200 or $100 or $50 or $1 million, you're helping this school meet its obligation to educate you young men, right? So that's philanthropy. All right, you've heard some of these names. Some significant philanthropists that you probably have heard, maybe some that you haven't. Mr. Isaiah Williamson was the original philanthropist and founder, but guys like Henry Rowan, who gave us over $25 million back in 2008. Mrs. Lee Rowan, who given us $11 million in the last 10 years. She endowed the power plant. That's why you see that sign in front of it that says the Lee Rowan School of Power Plant Technology. We're going to have Rowan Day in, I guess, a couple weeks here, right? It's a celebration of what Mr. Rowan meant to Williamson, because without Mr. Rowan and Mr. Lenfest's generous gifts about 2008, we probably would not be here. Mr. Jerry Lenfest recently passed away. I was just at his memorial service this week. I believe he was 88 years old, a prolific philanthropist that gave to Williamson and gave to so many other causes around Philadelphia that you wouldn't believe it. Mr. Frank Burke, he is the man who was Wayne Watson's best friend. He's the one who gave $2.5 million to build a new Watson dorm in honor of his friend. We've got some alumni. Got some alumni like Dave and Mickey Schrank, class of 49, I believe. You know, you see Schrank Way going around the perimeter. That was built that money was donated by Dave and Mickey Schrank. Our former trustee, Wayne Watson, who obviously gave generously, but his real contribution was his time and talent. He spent 33 years as the chairman of the board and led this school through some tough times. But here's the real kicker. Beyond those names that you might recognize, there are literally thousands and thousands of alumni, friends, foundations, etc., that have made it possible through their gifts of time, talent, and treasure to provide a full scholarship to every student attending for the last 130 years. So whether you give $200 a year, $50 a year, or whether you come here and tutor a student or offer your services in some other way, once you get out of here, you are a philanthropist, and it's a great way of starting to build philanthropy into your life. You don't need to be rich to be a philanthropist. You just need to care about something enough to make sure you want it to see it continue. All right, Some facts to consider. I just found this out in the process of preparing this. How many people in here are not from Pennsylvania, did not grow up in Pennsylvania? All right, so the vast majority of you, probably 80% or more, grew up in Pennsylvania. Well, Pennsylvania, for working class families, like the families that we all came from, because I came from a little coal mining town in Schuylkill County, right? For Pennsylvanians, we are one of the 3 worst states in the country in terms of college affordability, okay? 47th worst state in the country for total cost of attendance. And this is at a public school. So this would be like Penn State, your state schools like Bloomsburg, Kutztown, Westchester, Temple, over $24,000 a year with room and board. 49th worst state, only one worse than us for net cost to attend college. And net cost means, okay, if you come from a financially disadvantaged family, you're eligible for Pell Grants and FIA grants, okay? After getting all the grant money you're entitled to, you are still $14,000 short. And what that means is, if you divide $14,000 by minimum wage, okay, $7.50 an hour, you'd have to work 40 hours a week, 12 months a year, not just a school year, but 12 months a year in order for you to graduate without debt. Pretty amazing. So how many of you have friends that you went to high school with that are now in college, right? Probably didn't necessarily know what they wanted to do, what they wanted to go to college for, but borrowed money and are in the midst of going to college. Anybody have friends like that? Almost everybody, right? And you know that they don't really necessarily know what they're doing. That's not to say you can't go to college and know exactly what you want to do, but that's probably not the case for more than 50% of the people who go there. Pennsylvania has chosen not to invest in public education. Students from working class families are truly on their own. Now let's talk about Williamson and how we differ. We are the only post-secondary institution in the country that offers a full scholarship, including room and board, to every single student. I know that there are I did the research on this, there are over 6,000 post-secondary institutions in the country. Post-secondary simply means you go there after high school, you need a high school degree to go there. So that would be colleges, universities, technical schools like Stevens Tech, Penn College, any kind of nursing schools, things, any post-secondary institution, over 6,000 of them, only one in the entire country gives a full scholarship, inclusive of room and board, without any strings attached. You can go to West Point, you can go to military academies, you're going to get room and board, you're also going to have a commitment of 5 years of service afterwards. There are about, right Mike? There are about 4 or 5 colleges in the country that are called work colleges. And if you go to one of these, you get your tuition paid for, provided you're willing to work 15 hours a week after class. But you're still responsible for $10,000 of room and board. We are the only school in the country, the only one, that provides the full scholarship. So that's pretty amazing, and I think we should all, because I am one of you, we should all consider ourselves lucky and blessed to have had that opportunity. And the thing is, what are we going to do with it? How do we feel about it? Williamson is unlike any other college that I know of in terms of its admissions policies, right? We don't look at SAT scores. In fact, we don't even require our students to take the SATs. Okay, we don't look at your class rank, okay? We do look at your grades, you do the ASVAB, we do interview you, 2 interviews, right? We want to make sure that you're going to be a good fit here, and that you're going to have a good chance of making it through, being able to deal with the discipline. But we don't look at whether or not you were the star on the football team. We don't look, you might have been the best quarterback in the tri-state area, but that is not what got you into Williamson. It's not what got me into Williamson, okay? No one ever earned their way into Williamson. You're here for one reason, and that is the financial need. That's why we're all here. That's the primary factor that we look at when we bring students in here. So even though you might have had a 4.0 throughout your entire high school career. But that's not what got you in here. That might have been a tiebreaker. It might have been something we looked at, but financial need is what got us all here. That was, those are Mr. Williamson's rules. He wanted to take financially disadvantaged young men from families of need and give them an opportunity to change their life. So I think that's important to understand, that we didn't earn our way in here. It was philanthropy that got us here. All right, now we're going to get into a couple slides here. I want to explain the financial aspects of Williamson. So in our current fiscal year, and fiscal year means, for us, it means July 1st, which is, the month after we graduate, until June 30th. So we are currently in the 2018-19 fiscal year. Okay, how many of you know what a budget is? How many of you have a budget for their personal, whether your personal business? Okay, what are the two things that go into a budget? Well, you got income, right? That's what pays for everything. What's the opposite of income? What do you use the income for? Exactly, right? Those are the two big budget categories. So what I'm breaking down here for you guys is what the expenses are. So our budget is $8.4 million, okay? That's what it costs to run this school for a full fiscal year. And like all colleges, 64% of it, about 2/3 of it, is faculty, staff, salaries, employment benefits, medical, retirement. Basically, it's the cost of the people here, Mr. Burbage, the shop instructors, the teachers, the cooks, the maintenance people. That's the cost to pay all them, pay their medical benefits, their retirement, etc. And in any kind of college or educational institute, typically salaries is the biggest part of the overall budget. Next part is annual operating costs. Basically the food for the dining room, institutional insurance, things like that. We got our annual maintenance costs, utilities, the gas to keep the turbines running and to keep the lights on and the steam going. And then you got your shop supplies, and you can see what little we spend on shop supplies. Thank God we have philanthropists out there, alumni, that are consistently giving us materials, block, brick, wood. Nothing goes to waste, as you guys already know. And then you got a small portion of different materials. So that's the breakup of the expense side. In the current fiscal year, $8.4 million. Okay, if you divide that by the average number of students, it works out to about $32,430. Did we come up? About $32,430. And I think you will all agree that Williamson is a pretty frugal place, right? It's not like we're wasting any money. I just talked to Mr. Burbage about what it costs to feed you guys 3 meals a day. Guess how much it costs to feed you guys 3 meals a day? More or less than $5 total. $4.60 to feed you guys 3 meals a day. That's frugality if I've ever seen it, right? I'd be willing to bet if you went to Delaware County Community College, you'd probably be spending $8 for lunch. Okay. I'm going to skip over to, all right, so we went over the expenses. Now we're going to go over the income. And this is probably one of the areas of the largest misunderstanding and partial truths about Williamson. Does anybody know what an endowment is? Anyone ever hear the term?
It's like a chunk of money you put in the bank that you can only take out the interest of it every year.
That's almost verbatim. Anybody else have any thoughts on that? Endowment. Endowment is exactly what he just said. It is an amount of money typically given to us by a philanthropist, and the first one who set up the original endowment was Mr. Williamson. And he specifically said in his deed of trust that we are not allowed under any circumstances to use the principal. Okay? Mr. Rowan and Mr. Lenfest, when they gave their huge contribution back in 2008, it was to endowment, which means the money is restricted. The principal can't be used. If a tornado blew through Williamson tomorrow, we could not rebuild it with the endowment. Question?
What's the reason behind that?
Because the reason behind it is, in essence, that is the lifeblood of Williamson. So you've got to be, to make sure that it's always there, it's restricted so that it can never be touched, okay? And there are many institutions out there, like for example, Stevens Tech, right? Girard College. These guys were contemporaries of Mr. Williamson. In fact, Mr. Girard was someone that Mr. Williamson looked up to, and he was probably 20 or 30 years older. Set up Girard College. It no longer exists. Thaddeus Stevens Tech, it exists, but it's not a free school anymore. It was taken over by the state. One of the ways Williamson has maintained its autonomy is because we never, ever touched that endowment, because we can't. We can't touch it. It wasn't up to us.
So like you said, if like a tornado came in, what would happen to the endowment if you couldn't rebuild the school?
Well, fortunately, we'd have some insurance, but if the insurance was short, what we would have to do is we would have to go to court, right, to what's called the orphans court, to try and get them to temporarily release them. But the chances are is that's not what it's set up for. It's against the wishes of the person who donated the money. The wishes of the person who donated the money is that the endowment that we only use the interest off of it, okay? So we have, as of September 30th, $122 million in our endowment, okay? Seems like a lot of money, right? So, I hear this a lot. Williamson doesn't need my money anymore because we got a $100 plus million endowment, okay? Couldn't be further from the truth. So here's how we pay the bills. Here's how we pay the $8.4 million. That money is invested with an investment firm, and we basically withdraw at about 5.5%. So $122 million, and we don't use the current year. We use a 3-year average of the 3 previous years. And over the 3 previous years, it averaged about $110 million. If you take $110 million at 5.5%, it's going to generate $6.1 million, okay, towards our operating expenses, which is about 73% of our budget. We've got some annuities and things like that alumni have given us over the years, about $200,000. So together, the interest off the endowment and the, we'll call it other income, totals $6.3 million, right? That leaves us, if we do simple math, 8.4 minus 6.3, we're $2.1 million short. So to put that in terms that we would all understand, sometime tomorrow around lunchtime, we're going to be out of money, right? We'll be out of money for the week. We have about 75% of our budget covered every day, every week, okay? And we got to find the other 25%. And the way we find that is we have our advancement office, which is Mrs. Snyder and all the people that work so hard in the advancement office to basically bridge the gap. You guys help out when you guys do the, what's it called, the phone-a-thon, all the things that we do here, phone-a-thon, all the alumni get a letter in every single Williamsonian that goes out. We're constantly trying to raise the money to get $2.1 million to get us balanced at $8.4 million. So we've got to raise about 25% of our overall budget every year through advancement, okay? And that doesn't do a thing to move Williamson forward. That doesn't do a thing to put any money in the bank to allow us to start another shop. You guys are in the shops, right? You know the condition of some of the shop buildings, right? We need windows, we need roofs. We did a lot of work this summer on electrical. You look at the dorms, right? We're trying to renovate a dorm every other year. And that's my point about frugality. Williamson's a place where you can give $1 and get $1.50 worth of value. We don't waste money. We do a lot of the work ourselves. I think that's one of the things that attracted Mr. Lenfest and Mr. Rowan to us is our frugality, as well as talking to you guys when they're here on tours and seeing the excitement and enthusiasm that you guys have about life and about your shops. So the fact that we don't need people's money because we have a $122 million endowment, it couldn't be further from the truth. We need we need to raise $2.1 million to keep you guys fed and to keep the lights on for half a Thursday and all of Friday, okay, in simple terms. And see the next slide here. Some thoughts from our founder, his purpose. It was to provide financially disadvantaged young men with the opportunity to become productive and respected members of society. In his own words, it was seeing boys ragged and barefooted, lounging in the streets, going up with no education, no idea of usefulness, that caused him to think of founding a school where every boy could be taught some trade free of expense. I think the interesting thing there is he did not say, whoops, I keep doing this. Hold on. He did not say that he wanted to produce the best Hold on here. He did not say he wanted to produce the best carpenters, bricklayers, machinists. He wanted to produce respected members of society. And he knew the way to so he wanted to produce good people, good husbands, good fathers, good neighbors, good bosses, good employees. And he thought the way to do that was to teach a man a trade. Because if you can teach a fisherman, if you can teach a guy how to fish, he's got a trade and he can feed his family for life. It was important to him that we produced respected people, okay? Very important to him. I find the second quote really funny, because he said this 150 years ago. And I'm going to read it the way he wrote it, and then I'm going to substitute some of today's terms. He said that many worthy institutions, including the public schools, often unfit a young man for a life of manual labor, and to induce a false belief in their mind that to labor with their hands is not respectable. And for that reason, professional and mercantile pursuits are overcrowded with incompetent candidates who meet with failure. And thus, many, if they had been trained differently in life, could have supported themselves decently by labor of their own works. So 150 years ago, if you just simply substitute that many worthy institutions, take out institutions, that many worthy colleges and universities, including the public schools, often ill-prepare a young man for a life of manual labor, and to induce a false belief in his mind that to labor with his hands is not respectable. Okay, and for that reason, professional and mercantile pursuits, take those words out, put in, the professional job market is overcrowded with incompetent candidates who meet with failure. So how many of you, in high school, class just wasn't your thing? Anybody? Yeah, a lot of us, right? I was an underachiever, I did enough to get by. And that's the story with a lot of Williamson guys. And it wasn't until they got to Williamson that they realized that learning could be cool and that learning a trade really is something that you're going to take it with you the rest of your life wherever you go. And even if you don't work at that trade your whole career, what you learned here about the core values and so forth is transferable to any industry. Mr. Williamson believed that this school should not only teach young men a trade, but if they were also educated in good English and trained in the habits of industry and economy and frugality and taught such mechanical trades that when they arrive at manhood, they may be able to support themselves by the labor of their own hands, and become useful and respected members of society. He invested in institutions that changed people's lives for the better. That's why he was a philanthropist. All right, let's talk about when the rubber meets the road. Will we be philanthropists, right? Let's talk about the Williamson man, right? Williamson man stands on the shoulders of those alumni that came before, creating the reputation in industry that our graduates have. You guys, you juniors and seniors have been to the job fair, right? Have you ever seen a feeding frenzy like that? Like, have you ever seen that many companies trying to hire so few people? I would bet that our average graduate last year had 5 offers, right? You guys will probably have more than that this year because the economy and the need for tradesmen has never, you couldn't graduate in the last 50 years at a better time than you're graduating right now, which is pretty incredible. Now, why are those 174 companies there? Is it because they heard that you guys individually are the best carpenters or machinists in the world, or is it because there's a 132-year reputation in industry that says that? It's the latter, right? I mean, some of you seniors you've had 2 internships, you've already started helping continue that reputation. You juniors have had 1 year, okay? Freshmen, not at all. And I think the freshmen will probably be the most amazed when they go down there and they see these companies trying to hire them because they know that the best opportunity they have to get a Williamson man 2 years later will be to get him on as an intern and build a relationship with him. Core values, gentlemen. You know, if you watch the news every night, you think that life is very complicated, right? And the world is upside down. These 5 core values are probably the most important thing that you could ever learn, and they will carry you through the rest of your life. Just keep it simple. Faith, integrity, diligence. If you practice those 5 things, I got a wristband on that has them on here. Faith, integrity, diligence, excellence, and service. Every day it reminds me what they are. And if you follow them, and if you keep them close to your heart, it doesn't matter whether it's life, whether it's your family, whether it's your job, your church, whatever, you are set for life. Okay, we talked about the 174 companies and why they're here. Fact of the matter is, in whatever job you guys accept, you will likely be promoted faster and to higher levels of responsibility than other employees hired for the same job. That's just the way it is. You guys have hands-on experience. You've been through, when the time you graduate, you'll have been through 1,000 days of Williamson. And when you actually get out in the world and people pay you to do what you do here, you know, it's like, wow, it's pretty amazing. You guys, and I can see this whenever I meet you guys, when I go on mission trips with you guys, when I go into shops, on tours, the confidence and optimism that you guys have about life and your future is amazing. And most people do not have that because they weren't trained in a particular trade. They weren't put through the kind of rigorous preparation, and they don't have the core values. So that's why I see in your faces, and when I talk to you guys are excited. And you probably never be out of work a day in your life, literally. It's not to say a company can't close or something like that, but you'll be picked up, and your skill is portable. And again, whether you decide that you want to be a phys ed teacher 3 years down the road, or or a policeman, the core values, are going to come in handy all the way through. You guys are going to have, and this is the biggest difference, you're going to have a career, not a job. And there's a big difference between a career and a job. All right. Is Williamson worth preserving for future generations? I'll tell you right now, I'm a businessman, right? I build houses and developments for a living. Williamson is a terrible business model. We hear that all the time when we talk to philanthropists like Mr. Rowan and Mr. Lenfest. They say, what kind of a model is it where you run the best trade school in the business, in the country, you produce the best product, meaning you guys going out into the workforce, and you don't charge anything for it? Well, that's the way it's set up. That is the way Mr. Williamson wanted it. Williamson is built on the premise of philanthropy. It cannot and will not survive without it, okay? In business, we say, hope is not a plan, right? Anyone ever hear that saying, hope is not a plan? Okay, because if you're in business, you better have more than hope for your plan. You better have a detailed business plan, and you need to execute that. But at Williamson, hope is part of our plan. Every year, we're hoping that we can raise that $2.1 million to balance our budget, okay? And every year, I will tell you, I've been on the board since 2003. Every year, there are 2 or 3 miracles that happen. There are alumni that have been out for 60 years and that have not been back to the school. And we get a call from the executor of the will, and they said they left their entire state $300,000 to Williamson. That happens probably every 2 or 3 years, okay? People that, that didn't go to Williamson, but whose father went to Williamson, we get a call from the executor. But hope is part of our plan, which is, for businessmen, that's a hard proposition to swallow, that you gotta rely on God's providence every year and a lot of hard work to raise that money. And that's what I want you young guys to understand more than anything else, that there is no guarantee that Williamson will be around for the next generation or the one after that, just as there was no guarantee that it would be around for you. It's here because of the philanthropy of major donors, but even more so, thousands and thousands of small donors, alumni that have given over the years to make sure it was around for you guys and us. I already gave you some some examples of other schools that, that weren't as lucky as we were. Girard College, Thaddeus Stevens, founded on the same premises, no longer around. Probably one of the most amazing statistics that blows my mind every time I think about it, right? 1 in 5 alumni contribute back to Williamson in any given year. Why? I don't know why. Anybody have any thoughts on that? Venture a guess? Anybody?
Because some people actually, I guess, take time to reflect and value what they receive.
You're saying they're not, some people aren't doing that? Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably some of it. I'm hoping that a lot of it is that people don't truly understand, and that's why we're streaming this live, so that people start to understand, and we're going to do this more often, where we try and educate you guys as we go, so that you all understand how you got here. Any other thoughts on why people don't? You think it's because it's too strict and people get a bad feeling about it, or the rules are too hard? You guys are tough, right? You knew what you were buying into. We all did, right? It is tough. It was designed to be tough, right? One of the best lessons I ever learned at Williamson that has carried me through some tough times in business, right, is life isn't fair. Do you ever get hours for something you didn't really do? Anybody? Yeah. Okay, yeah, that happens. Guess what? What did you learn from that? Life isn't fair. It wasn't designed to be fair, okay? All I can say is toughen up and get over it, because it's going to happen every now and then. Life just isn't always fair. Don't spend any time worrying about it. Don't spend any time thinking about it. Just move on to the next thing and don't make the same mistake again. But anyway, that's a problem we got to solve. Why? And I will tell you this, with young alum that are out less than 10 years, it's more like 1 in 10. Okay, so we got a row here of about 10. If statistics hold true, one of you guys will give each year. It might be a different guy every year, but about 1 in 10. And I think that's something we got to look in our own hearts and figure out why is that, and is it worth saving? One of the things we run into, why should donors give if we as alumni don't? That's something we run into a lot when we're dealing with donors. Because a natural question for a major donor would be, all right, what kind of alumni participation you have? And that's a tough one for us to answer, right? Because you would think, based on the fact that we're the only school in the country that offers a totally free education, that it would be higher than that. And just so you understand, philanthropy isn't just about Williamson. I mean, you can be philanthropic with your church. You can be, agreeing to coach your local youth team, be a big brother, whatever. That's all philanthropy. And there's many ways and many worthy causes. But I'll give you an example. The Stabler Foundation, they put $1 million in our endowment, and they require a moral commitment to give back. So I don't know if you guys have heard of the senior pledge yet. Basically, we are asking seniors to commit to donating $5 a month, which is $60 a year, for 5 years, okay? And that is the commitment that we've given to the Stabler Foundation for the $1 million that they've given us, because they want to see participation, alumni participation, increase in terms of giving. All right. Is it our responsibility to ensure that future generations have the same opportunity we had? Anybody have any thoughts on that? Do you think that's a responsibility that we should share in? Anybody? No judgment here. Anybody not think so? Okay. The gift of Williamson education can't be earned. We talked about that. You didn't earn your way in here because of your SAT, because you had a 1,600 on your SATs, or because you were the best quarterback in the tri-state area. So the gift of a Williamson education cannot be earned, nor can the debt ever be truly repaid, but it can be paid forward, okay? We can make sure it's here for the next guy. You've all heard the old Bible saying, to whom much is given, much is expected. So at the end of our lives, we all have to give an accounting of ourselves. And, you know, when I say it can't be repaid, so, you know, I've been on the board 15 years, and I feel like I owe more back to Williamson every passing year for what it did for me. Our country has never needed Williamson men more, not just for the trades, but for the type of people, the type of men you guys become, okay? Again, just watch the news at night and you'll know what I'm talking about. The world needs Williamson men. And there's no shortage of financially disadvantaged families whose kids deserve a Williamson education. You don't have to be wealthy or older to be a philanthropist. That's the best part of philanthropy. You just need to care about something enough to make sure it's around for the next generation. Consider making philanthropy part of your life. That's my suggestion. Get involved and stay involved, because you'll find, every time I commit to going on the mission trip, you know, the 5 times to the Dominican Republic, El Salvador, you know, for the week or 2 before, I dread it. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be up on a roof. It's gonna be 95 degrees. I'm gonna be soaking wet, okay? And when I get there and I get to hang around with you guys like I did this year, it ends up being like one of the best weeks of the year. And I come back fully energized, battery totally recharged, you know, ready to hit the ground running for another year at Williamson, because you guys are what it's all about, and seeing the excitement about the future. And I see myself in every one of you guys 39 years ago, you know, 38 years ago when I came here. And if you would have told me back in 1977 when I came here that someday the president would be reciting the things that he just said about me, I would say it's not possible. I was an underachiever. I wasn't all that involved in extracurriculars activities here, but those core values stuck with me and changed my life, and I know it's changing your lives too. So before I end, any questions from anybody? Any thoughts? Anything? We got one over here.
Is there anything like students can do now to raise money?
I think you should meet with Mrs. Snyder in the advancement office, and I'm sure that there are things. Nobody tells the story better, and no one displays the need better than you students. That's why we have the ambassadors. That's why whenever we just went to New York last week and met with one of the co-founders of Home Depot, and we took a student with us, and we took a recent alum that's been out 2 years, because we could talk till we're blue in the face, but when he looks into your faces and sees, you know, the appreciation, and you guys tell your individual stories, it melts them, literally. So yeah, I'm sure there are things beyond just the phone-a-thons, and Mrs. Snyder, I'm sure, can in the advancement office can work with you guys. But that's the kind of excitement we need, guys. That's exactly what we need. Go ahead.
How many years was it before you started giving back after Williamson?
Giving back money, probably 5. Giving back in terms of my time, like my first giving back in terms of my time was I was probably 38, and I went on a Dominican Republic trip, and that really is what changed, you know. And because of that, I guess I got noticed by some board members, asked me to be on the board. But you know, it took me a while after I got out of Williamson to fully appreciate it. You know, it's one of those things. It's hard to describe. You need a little bit of space and time sometimes to get out of here and decompress and look back on it, right? Because you have a different view. I will tell you, your view of it now, while you're going through and following these rules and blah 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 and working off hours, it's going to be different than when you get out of here. It's going to be totally different, and you're going to wish someday that you could send your sons here, okay? Because you're going to say that's exactly what they need, because it changed your life. But the reality of it is that most of you guys are not going to be able to send your sons here, because the financial need won't be there because of the gift that you've been given and the success that you create as a result of it. Anybody else? Anybody think this was worthwhile? Do you guys understand it any better? So do you think this place is worth saving? Preserving? All right, I do too. I'm glad it was here. I'm glad the guys that went before me. I feel like right now the mantle is on our generation, but you guys got less than probably 200 days until you're full-fledged Williamson men. So I'm hoping you guys will take that senior challenge.
Is your business still operate?
My business?
Your-
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
You said you have over 40 employees,
48. Yeah.
48. How many of them are Williamson grads?
One right now, but we are coming to, and part of the reason is our average tenure is over 20 years. So, early on, when I hired superintendents, they never left. I had my first superintendent retiring the end of this month after almost 25 years. But we got a, whatever the top table is for the career fair. We're gonna be down for the career fair. We're looking to hire probably 2 people. I hope to talk to some of you guys.